Ready.
Is Stow TV ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Are we else ready? Okay. It is 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. I'll call this meeting of Stow Board of Selectmen to order. And as usual, I will begin with public input on anything not on our agenda. Linda Hathaway, Town Clerk.
Yes, I'm here just to say that nomination papers are still available for the election. The deadline to take them out is March 20th. Deadline to turn them is March 24th. And right now, we currently have no one running for Board of Assessors, as Georgie Smith did not wish to run for re-election. So if anybody out there is interested, the assessors are actually meeting on Thursday. It's Thursday at 4:30. It's on our website. And that's the main thing. And dog licenses, we're only halfway there, 618, and there was 1,200 last year, so get them in.
I did.
Thank you.
I was going to mention dog licenses in my chairman's comments, but
I'm sorry to.
that's all right. That's all right.
Again,
We
to
should
reinforce
support
it.
It's very
You can
important.
reinforce it.
I can reinforce that.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing nothing. Chairman's comments. I actually have a few things tonight. Tomorrow night is the Town Hall the public forum sponsored by the Town Hall Renovation Committee. Tom, Courtney, can you help me out on the time? I know it's at Pompo.
No, it's at the town hall.
It's at the Town Hall. Well, that makes sense. It's at Town Hall. At
Town hall,
7
p.m.
7 p.m. I mean, I'll make a pitch on this. The Town Hall Reno Committee has been very straightforward. The numbers we've gotten back, preliminary though they may be, are very high. No one's tremendously happy with it. Public input on what to do with this, jewel of ours is very, very important to give them some guidance. So please, if at all possible to be there, please consider being there. I also want to say a few words about coronavirus, which is on everyone's mind. If you're looking for information, there is information on the Stow website under the Board of Health. They also have a link to information from the State Department of Public Health. There you will find, all I can say is a tremendous amount of information, including links on the number of cases currently in the state, their status, prevention and treatment, of course, travel information, frequently asked questions. If you are looking for information, that is probably the best place to go right now. Thank you to Phoebe Habercorn of our office for pulling all of that together for me and making that suggestion. There is also an open meeting law forum put on by the State Attorney General's office, right? Yes. On March 25th, Wednesday, March 25th at Pompo, 5:30 to 7:30. These are typically very, very good. And typically, they do have a period where you can actually ask questions. And sometimes you can even linger a little bit and get somebody's ear. Something, Linda?
And the town clerk's office organized that event, and we will make a decision on the Friday before if it goes on. And we'll put that on our website and send a distribution.
Yes. All public meetings these days are subject to cancellation, as one might understand. Along those lines,
Are you going to cancel this one?
no, I'm not, but next best thing, it is looking like we're not going to have a quorum for the Selectmen's meeting on March 24th. I know you're all disappointed. I'm unclear how the town will function for 2 weeks, but it looks like because Mr. Ryan and I are both traveling so far, that we're not going to have a meeting on that date. Obviously, travel plans are subject to change, so you never know. And we have to remember to inform Maureen, who's not here because I don't want her preparing for it. That's not happening. Along those lines, unfortunately, Kate Hogan's fundraiser benefiting the Boys and Girls Club of Assabet Valley, which was scheduled for this Friday, March 13th in the afternoon, I think at 4, has been canceled, unfortunately, due to the coronavirus emergency. Those looking to make donations, they have a good start, but still need some help. Those looking to make donations can go to the website of the Boys and Girls Club of Assabet Valley, and there is a button there that you can click and make donations. Is that about it, Kate? So So with that being said, I'll go to minutes. We have one set of minutes, I think, from our last meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of February 25th, 2020 of the Board of Selectmen with any amendments. Mr. Ryan, eagle eye,
I
will bring forward.
had a few myself, but Mr. Ryan?
On the determination of conflict of interest, I think that on the fourth line, has applied and is the top choice for hire as a full-time firefighter versus leaving it kind of hanging on what he might be.
The fourth line of that first paragraph?
Under determination, yeah.
Oh, so I got it.
Has
So-
applied and
Yes.
is the top choice for hire as a full-time firefighter.
Okay, I actually think that that might belong under the appointment.
It's actually appointed as a full-time firefighter later on. It's actually in the motion, so it's not
Okay.
anything that's,
Well, I have a comment there too. This needs some work. I was going to take out the part of the motion that says determine that there is no conflict of interest, because that isn't what we determined in Captain Benoit supervising his son, should he be appointed a full-time firefighter, and then leave the rest of it. Any financial interest that has been disclosed here is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services. That's technically what we determined. That was on the written determination. I think what you're saying is we can add the paragraph about how he was the top-rated candidate and would be appointed full-time to the next paragraph under appointment of fire, which actually needs more of a title.
either one,
Okay.
you know. It's just that this seemed to leave it hanging as far as
I
top
agree.
choice for hire.
Can we agree that Mr. Ryan and I will give some edits to Maureen on this part?
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ryan, do you have anything else?
The next header, appointment of firefighter. Oh, not appointment of
Yes,
fire.
right.
Under the addition of Neshoba Regional School District, school committee vacancy for town election.
Yep.
Let's see, third line down, it says the 3 district towns agreed to add an additional representative. I think it's the 3 school committee representatives from the 3 district towns.
I think you're right. You're right.
Good catch.
And then on the last line, at a later date, to propose amendments to the district agreement rather than to amend the district agreement, because they can't actually amend the district agreement.
Very good. That too. Anything else?
Well, let's see. Signing of the multiple representation. On the 4th line down on the right side, that representing Stow by KP Law would be fair. I think it would be not a conflict of interest, not fair.
I agree. Yep.
And then just on the last line of that, I think attorneys is misspelled, but I'm not 100%.
Yes,
It
it is.
doesn't look right.
It is. And then I have one last one under liaison reports. Mr. Salvi said the library building committee. I think what I'd like to do is add my few comments to Mr. Ryan's, and then we can deputize him to go talk to Maureen about these changes. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yes.
That being said, are you willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
So I second Mr. Burke's motion.
That being said, a motion is made to approve the minutes of February 25, 2020 as amended. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. And we don't have anything else, any other minutes. Good. Items in the correspondence that anybody saw that for a future agenda item, I have one thing to comment on, but does anybody else have anything else? Does anyone else have anything else?
Nope.
Very nice letter from a resident to the police chief about Prosecutor Sean Collins. This is a resident of Boxborough Road. I'm reluctant to use their name just in case they don't want that, even though it's a public document. You know, people have been mentioning speeding there. This person mentioned something to Sean about a certain class at the airfield, and Sean went and he spoke to the class, and there were some noticeable results after that. Very nice to see a letter like that. Did you put that in the back of the correspondence? And, oh, I just saw the moderator come in, and I was going to offer the moderator the courtesy of going first, because I have 2 lengthier presentations right after from Kate and HeatSmart. Would you like to go first, or would you?
Sure.
Well, then you're on. Sorry, you didn't even get a chance to take your coat off.
That's fine. Why don't I move up in the road? Or do you want me to sit up here?
Oh, up here. Definitely up here.
Oh, jeez.
A guy of your exalted position and all power you have should be at the table with the rest of us.
So you had
We're honored to be with you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So this began, I saw David's posting of vacancies on the Charter Commission. I asked him about it by email. He gave me an answer by email. It was pretty good. At least I thought so. Rather than just sending it on everybody or putting it in correspondence, I thought I'd ask him to come here for a few minutes and just tell him what he's got in mind, or have him tell us what he has in mind.
So in theory, we're supposed to have a charter review committee every 10 years, and we're 5-6 years overdue. And I've been kind of dragging my feet on it. I didn't see a huge need for it. I'd actually been kind of waiting for the Selectmen to do a bylaw review committee, which we're overdue for. And but I wanted to get one started while Bill was still here, because he knows better than most of us why some of the changes in the last 2 charter review committees were done. So I wanted to get it started this year. I wanted to get it started around now, just so that there's no pressure. They could wait until next year, or even but hopefully target maybe next year's annual town meeting to bring something forward. So that if I started it in a fall, then there'd be a lot of pressure to get it done by the following spring, or it might be a year and a half before they got anything done. So I thought starting near the beginning of the year, so they have about a year to get things done, would be a good idea. And beyond that, I see a few error corrections level things that I'm interested in. I don't see any huge need, and certainly you folks would know I don't see any big movement to change our form of government or anything like that. In fact, one of the, speaking of the charter review and the bylaw review, I think both of those are in the charter, and those are things that there's a lot of committees mentioned in the charter that might be better done as bylaws.
Right.
That'd be the big things that I'm looking at. Most of them are that I have in my very short list are very small things.
The only other question I had for you is you sent me the posting, I want to say around Valentine's Day, and it was open for about 30 days, but then there was some difficulty getting it on the website.
Yeah, so we're going to extend that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
I am looking for people to fill it. It's in theory a 5-member committee, so I need to arm twist 5 people to be on it. I can only find 4. In theory, I could appoint myself. I think in the past, the moderator has appointed himself to that committee. I have no burning desire to be on a committee, but it'd be something that I'd be willing to do.
Do you want to say a couple words about what the commitment would be for that?
One of the reasons that I'm interested in starting it now is, in theory, they could probably meet once a month and have plenty of time to get their work done by the annual town meeting next year. That would be my thought, is if they could target once a month, I'd be very happy. So I don't see it as anything close to a lot of the other ad hoc committees.
Other questions and comments? Tom, anything? Brian?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Moderator, does it make any sense, as long as there are no structural impediments in our organic law, to perhaps forming a joint charter and bylaw review committee?
I'd be happy to consider that. The selectmen didn't seem that interested in forming a bylaw review committee, but if you want to go forward with one, I'm happy to.
It hasn't been on the radar. It hasn't even come up.
Well, I've been busy with other things, but
Ms. Fraser.
So maybe if the Charter Review Committee has a wonderful time and they just want to keep going, they can start on the bylaws after that.
That'd be fine. I don't know that they have any structural, just like any other board in town, I don't think they have any structural requirement that says that they can't propose bylaw changes. That'd be something that if we did want to go that way, I'd like to, I guess, hear from you folks, because before I start making appointments, I'd probably be happy to come and say, these are the folks that have applied. Do the selectmen have any thoughts on the process? As sort of a leading.
I'll just say this, I think bylaw review is going to be a little more complicated than charter review. I could be wrong, but bylaw review could get bogged down in the personnel bylaw. Earth removal, I think we tinkered with 5 or 6 years ago, but you never know. That one always attracts a lot of attention. Noise bylaw has received a lot of attention, didn't really go anywhere, so I just see some pools of quicksand in that one. Not a bad idea, and we gotta do it, but I don't know that you want to necessarily tie charter review, which I think would be quicker, as you've indicated. I don't know that you necessarily want to tie the two together.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I have
me.
I have no strong opinion either way. It's just the charter actually takes, calendar-wise, a really long time to change.
Why don't we say this? I mean, it's a decent idea, Mr. Burke. It was your idea. Do you want to work with David and maybe the town administrator, think this through a little bit more than we have time right now? The whole idea is to get your input. Try to flesh this out. Is this a good idea to link it up? Is it a bad idea? What do you want to do? And just come back and make some proposal in a few weeks or months. Is that fair?
Yeah, our chair is belling the cat once again.
No, we need somebody to do the work, and you had a great idea, so you might as well run with it and get
Yeah, that's called belling the cat.
and get all the
Chair.
glory. So,
I don't seek glory, I just want to help Mr. Moderator and the town administrator, if that's possible.
so further questions? I mainly wanted the board to be aware of this effort. So, okay.
On a completely different subject, and not to discuss tonight, but in the next few meetings, I would like to spend 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes with the selectmen to discuss the annual town meeting. And in case there's a continued, as most of you know, there was a public health emergency declared today. If that continues, we want to put some contingencies in if we need to delay town meeting. In theory, I could do that myself, but I'd really want some discussion of that, because in theory, you folks are the ones that schedule it in advance.
So I think it's a great idea, and you should send me an email, just because Maureen's not here. Send me an email that I can share with her. It's going to get complicated, I think, because of the budget, which has to get passed by a certain time, right? At least the school budget does.
Well,
We have till the end
As
of
a,
May.
as a,
End of June, I think.
under the charter,
Oh.
I have prescribed some deadline dates, and on or about the second meeting in March, which we're not going to have now, I offer the budget to meet that. I mean, there's no relief or remedy that if it slips some, I'll be ready. So whenever that meeting is,
But when do we have to pass the budget by?
Sorry, by July 1st.
well, even technically then, we can do something similar to what the state does. You don't call it a 1/12 budget, but we don't even need to have the entire budget passed by then. Yeah.
So let's not run into any open meeting law questions because this isn't on the agenda.
That's why I said, is I'll just send
Yeah,
an email, because
great
this is
idea.
something we have 8 weeks
Right.
to make a
Yeah, we
decision.
could go into June.
Okay.
We could always pass out hazmat suits. But no, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to look into that.
I'm sure yours would have a very jaunty skull. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I know you said it'll take me 5 minutes, and that's about what it took, but I appreciate it. Oh, Linda?
Just as the chief election official, the election has to be completed by the end of May, before the end of May. Just, yeah.
And just, we can talk about this more, but
Yeah, just
the election is technically a part of town meeting?
correct.
So if we postponed, you know,
Elec-
the meeting part of town meeting would be in effect postponing the election?
No, the election could occur before the
You could
town meeting,
separate.
but just, you can separate them, but it's just,
Good thing
more
to keep in
discussion
mind.
for a future meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
But just-
Don't want to violate the open meeting law on the cusp of having a refresher course from the AG. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Now I can go to our annual visit from Representative Kate Hogan discussing the FY21 budget process. I think you know everybody's table.
I'll wave.
It's going to take me a while to get used to this.
I could hurt myself trying to lean that far over the
Do
table.
not hurt yourself, Tom, whatever you do.
How are you?
Good. It's
Yeah.
been a little hectic at the State House. And not to add fuel to the fire of your town meetings and et cetera, but we are seeking advisement from the Attorney General on all matters of elections and budgets.
Well, that's good.
To make it
I mean, and I
so
got a
that we're
question
not
from
having to,
And I got a question from somebody today about meetings such as this. Would they be willing to, quote unquote, suspend the requirement that for a quorum of a meeting you have to have physical presence?
Yes.
You know, so
yes, those and other things will be taken up because we just had a state of emergency
yes,
called. So we know that
people are wondering this
people are
stuff.
wondering, and I've gotten more than one email, and I only have 4 towns, so everyone so far has made inquiries.
Thank you.
So I'm really glad to be here. I also wanted to say, as it relates to coronavirus, that I know there's going to be a $15 million addition to a supplemental budget that's coming up next week that will be applied to resources for towns and cities so that everyone has what they need when they need it. And that's come down from the governor, and I don't anticipate there'll be too much of a problem getting it through the budget.
Yeah.
So
Great.
as we see what those funds mean, we'll be in touch with towns, I'm sure, and let them know. So
Thank you.
I will start with sort of an overview of where we are. We're halfway through the session-ish, a little bit more than that. And some things have gotten done. And I wanted to start just by talking about the education bill that passed. It's called the Act Relative to Educational Opportunity. And it's a $1.5 billion over 7 years in Chapter 70 aid and special education. It has been about 4, 5, 6 years in the making, depending how you look at it, and I think that it's going to supply a lot of what's needed for our high schools and our other schools in terms of getting them what they need. We're hoping to close the achievement gap, and that's really the basis of the bill itself. Modernizes the foundation budget, as everybody I'm sure has read, and it provides additional resources for education of English learners. That fully funds charter school reimbursements. It is a comprehensive special education support, so it commits to a 75% reimbursement rate for all instructional and transportational costs. I think that's where we'll see money in savings. It should be significant. There's a school building, the school building fund, the MSBA grants are going from 600 million to 750 million, which moves things along more quickly, both in infrastructure projects and rebuilds. So, and ongoing, there's also, and I think this is really important for us because I sit in a district that has discrete needs that don't always get met in looking at all the other schools in the state. Their ongoing review of the current formula. So we're saying that we're changing Chapter 70, but we're also continuing to look at it, and it charges the Department of DOR and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with studying equity and accuracy of methods currently used to determine municipal contributions. So for some of our smaller towns and for school formulas that just don't fit for the ways in which we represent ourselves and our numbers, it helps to say, can we look at this? Is this really equity if we're not able to achieve certain goals and certain resources for schools? So
Is this the debate about the foundation budget?
it's not a debate as much as keeping the discussions open. We're not saying that this is the end of it all. It's basically a way of, sort of reinvigorating Chapter 70 with funds, with the focus on closing the achievement gap. So, some of our schools aren't necessarily going to see the biggest amount of funding.
Right.
But there are certainly ways in which we will see funding, and there are ways that we can continue to have conversations around our formulas. We don't feel like they're effective in doing what they're supposed to do, basically. So
Thank you.
we also passed a transportation bill in the House that's set to make its way through the Senate and of course over to the governor. So conversations are on the table, but nothing has been passed yet. It creates revenue and spending for about $600 million in annual transportation dollars to be used to deliver the resources necessary to address the roads, bridges, and transit issues that we have. One of the pieces of this transportation bill or bills that is really important for folks is that Chapter 90 has been changed from 200 million a year to 300 million a year, and that is not, we've had a good year, but an actual investment, an actual commitment to our cities and towns that they'll be receiving the extra 100 million every year in order to deal with Chapter 90 needs.
That is good news for us.
There's also an investment of 300 million or more for RTAs and RTA projects, which is very exciting because we're just beginning to begin to develop our public transportation, and so that allows us to look at our RTAs and ask for more, to be able to get more, and that they should be able to deliver for us, on the needs that we have and provide resources, because they're getting a lot more resources. And I think it's on the municipalities, but also on the legislators to ensure that we get everything that we deserve, and everything that we're able to get is going to happen because we're going to be asking for it, and we'll be very aggressive about that. I was able to get first and last mile shuttle amendments in the transportation bill, which will create first and last mile for Hudson, for Maynard, and for Stow. We have some monies already initially, but what that will allow us is 3 years of first and last mile shuttle for all 3 towns. So it'll allow us to grow the ridership, to understand what we're doing, and be able to perhaps grow how we're able to use the transportation for everyone involved.
And for those who don't know, when you say first and last mile, you mean
I mean that you
the train.
You are going to park your car, get on a bus or van, and be driven over to South Acton Station, and then you're going to get onto a train, come back, and be picked up at South Acton Station. So you will not have to take a car into Boston if you don't need. And so we'll begin small. We certainly won't begin in huge numbers, but I think that we will grow it as we are offering the service, and people see that it's both reliable and something of a godsend for people that just can't face another day as a road warrior. So for me, it's been absolutely critical. I've been working on this for a long time because it is so hard for me to understand how we have so little transportation 26 miles west of Boston, and so I'm very committed to making this happen. I've also was able to get some money in for a suburban transit grant program, which would provide an infusion of funding to suburban towns exclusively, being us, to partner with RTAs, private entities, and municipalities. So if we're able to show that we're working with businesses, they're able to supply resources, whether it's money, parking, a little of both, or something absolutely different that still makes things move, we'll be able to receive grants over periods of time. And so that too will help us both grow the transportation, but also be able to grow what the program is, and having businesses invest in our transportation system, which I think is critical for people to understand we can do it and that you can get people to your jobs, and we just need, we need to continue to grow this program.
Can I mention one thing in connection with that?
Yep.
And I've mentioned this to you before. I find this fascinating, though. The Baker administration's Department of Transportation issued a report called Congestion, I think it was Congestion 2019, I think it's about a year old now, examining areas like ours, South Shore, where car travel to Boston has changed a lot over the last 10 to 20 years. And the bottom line of the report was people have to get out of their cars. The roads are as big as they're going to get. They can't handle anymore. People have to find other alternatives, which is just a tremendously significant thing for a Department of Transportation to say, because typically they're the people who want to widen roads, build more roads. And I give a lot of credit to the Baker administration for just stepping up and saying, that's it. Because we all know now, when you widen roads, when you build more roads, people show up and they get congested again. And kudos to them for recognizing the problem, and thanks to you for having picked up on this issue, I think, before they did.
Obviously, it's incredibly important. We have to do this. I think that you'll find from this bill as it moves through, there are a lot of great amendments that have been added to it, that there are a lot of parts of it that will be helpful, from studying tolling on roads to studying congestion and what can be done with recommendations that need to be made. Programs and grants like ours, being able to hold people accountable in terms of parking, where it is, how we can create more parking, and how we can make it available for public transportation. So I think, it's going to be generational, the way that I think that the education bill is going to be generational, in that it's both an infusion, but it's also another way of looking at what we have to do, which is to step back and understand that we have to use public transportation, and if we don't have it, we virtually have to invent it. Right. And I thank all of you for helping as we look at Stow and figure out where we can do it, where do we park the cars, and how do we get people to South Acton Station, because that's the beginning of it. It's the first step, the first mile. So
I think Mr. Burke wanted to add something, and Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Selectman.
Yes, I'm State Representative. Just a quick question. Is the DOT still in Park Square?
Yes.
One of the things would reduce congestion if we started moving a lot of these state agencies out of the Boston area and to areas around the hub. That's one of the probably quickest ways government can affect that change.
And I think I see it in some of the towns that could really use it in and around this area, where some have been more successful than others. But certainly we have plenty of mill towns waiting with office space for those folks that do want to come out this way.
So having worked at a state agency that went through 2 moves, I can say we tried to do that both times. Just for the practical reason the rents are lower out past 128. And the problem becomes transportation.
Yeah.
Because if you're an agency that has customers or even employees, you want to be able to rely on public transportation. And it was a real trade-off. So the agency that I worked at moved a little bit further out, Charlestown. Then another one I was associated with moved to Malden. But you know, it's crucial for them, for many of them, to stay on the T lines, especially if they have customers.
Yeah, so the TMAs, the RTAs, and municipal government really, you know, can do a lot, I think, to begin those first, you know, taking the first steps as we have both an investment on the executive side, on the legislative side, to make this work. And I know we're going to be able to do it because we have to get this done. And as we begin to do this, we are going to assume more, that we need more, and when we start asking for more, we will get more.
Right.
And we'll build on what we have. And so, you know, it's a
Yeah.
passion, and I know that it's shared by many of the people on this board. So
It's interesting Brian mentions that. The Division of Capital Asset Management, which is the state agency that governs state buildings, they very much encourage state agencies whose leases are running out to move out. But at the same time, they recognize you got to have accessibility. So we had to justify the DCAM while we were staying in the Boston area, and it was a bit of a battle, but they recognized we had to have our people.
which is sort of a segue back to my $5 million grant for the Suburban Transit Grant
Right.
Program, because if people are coming out, you can sit down and figure out what people need and how they need it, work with TMA, work with the RTA, see what you can do to move people, not only to transportation and jobs in Boston, but around the area, and also to Worcester and
Right.
Framingham,
Right.
because people work there too.
So,
Couple things. One thing is, it's funny you mention making it easier for people to use public transportation and stuff. And every now and then I go into Boston, and what we'll do is we'll stop at Riverside and take the train in. But I won't do that anymore because of the pay by phone thing. I couldn't figure out how to do it. You know, and the thing is, I'm not the greatest with a cell phone, but how many other people that don't even have cell phones can't park there because it's only pay by phone stuff? I wandered out of there mumbling a couple times, you know, and I just went in to pick up my daughter or something like that. So I would really suggest that, you know, they look into other ways. I wouldn't care if I had to feed $5 bills into it. But, you know, I don't want to put another app on my phone and then have to dial it up and, you know, things like that. So that's a barrier that I saw that, you know, I think can be overcome. But I think it was just done to try to save a little bit of money on some people. Maybe, and I'm probably an outlier when it comes to that. But the other thing is all the public transportation is planned to be self-sustaining, i.e. without state funds. So that the thing is, I fully support, you know, the pilot programs and things like that to see what you can get up and running. But the thing is, I think the people that are using it should be the ones paying for it, fully.
you know what I'm going to say.
Oh, I know.
Hasn't been a transportation system in this country in the past 150 years that hasn't had some subsidy from the government.
Well,
the MBTA may have taken it too far, but
but the thing is, we're the government too, you know? And so the thing is, if I don't use it, I don't think I should be paying.
But I think what we're looking at is we're reaching a breaking point.
Yeah.
We in Boston have the award of the greatest congestion of any city in the United States of America. We have that much congestion. And so in order for us to get out, what are we willing to do in order to take as many cars as possible off the road. And how do we think about it intelligently? How does everybody pay into the system? So, you know, not one group of people is paying all the money into it, but those people that profit by the roadways also are willing to put into it, so that we're all able to just have a better life. I mean, it's really so simple.
Well,
And you can talk about economic development, you can talk about so many different things. You know, workforce, how you move people around, but really to give people the opportunity not to have to drive into the most congested city in the United States of America seems like not a lot to ask.
and generally, transportation options, especially to a city, help the economy tremendously. And it's been shown, getting cars out of certain congested areas helps economically. Times Square, the best thing they ever did was shove all the cars out of Times Square and just make it a pedestrian mall. Now, I mean, New York is a little bit ahead of us in being a disaster, but you know, there was a study not that long ago that the average speed in Manhattan is 4 miles an hour, meaning you can walk faster. And that's why they went to congestion pricing, which even me, I don't want to do that. But it is getting nuts. And when you look at all the cars on Route 2, there's one head in all those cars. It's just getting nuts.
You know, and the thing is, I think a lot of people would take public transportation if it's as fast and about the same price. But the thing is, if somebody's paying $30 a day to drive into Boston, okay, they can pay $30 a day to take public transportation.
Well, you know,
Not
here's the
10.
thing, there were many people around me in that chamber that were talking about trains, that were talking about roads, that were talking about much larger ideas about transportation. And I said, I humbly believe that what I need to do with this transportation bill is make it possible for my 4 towns to have an option they didn't have before I went into this transportation bill. I'll let everybody else take care of the parking and the trains. My people need to be able to get to trains. Why shouldn't they be able to get to trains? They need to. We have the resources. We're going to make it happen slowly but surely. Everybody committed to it, and that's sort of the way I took on this particular transportation bill, and perhaps bring business in as well if they need to be able to get people back and forth.
And I just wanted to say, you know, I'm not speaking against it.
But I know what you mean. Sustaining is a hard thing in transportation because it's sort of an added value to other things.
The MBTA is 26, if you can factor in parking at South Acton, it's $26 round trip every day. Now, that's, if you have one of those monthly passes, it may be cheaper, especially if you go more frequently, but if you buy a 10 ride at $10.50 a throw, actually, I'm sorry, it's 27. Enough, okay, I'm going to decide, he's
I heard
subtle.
it too.
He's subtle.
Mr. Selectmen, that was
Ingeborg
great.
was less subtle. So.
And I just want to also mention in terms of PFAS, we have the bill before the Senate. If anybody wants to give a call, we're really trying to get the task force put together. I think that the governor, I think DEP done remarkable work, but I think the legislature should have a voice and an understanding, especially as it relates to each of the individual regions that they're dealing with. So that is very important. I also deal with DEP on a fairly regular basis to find out what's going on here. So we continue those circles of investigation around PFAS, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward, always trying to get what we can to make it happen faster. So.
Well, I didn't mean to rush you through the rest of your presentation.
That's okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Questions from the board for Kate? So I just want to say thank you. Mr. Regan, anything for?
No, I'm completely content.
Okay. Somebody recorded that.
I'm going to miss him, I'll say
yes,
that.
we all will.
Thank you.
He'll no doubt be watching our meetings on YouTube.
On his cell phone.
While he's doing goat yoga out in
Yeah.
the
I know there was something missing from my short list. I'll add that too.
Just want to say thank you for everything. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're remarkably accessible and hands-on for a state representative. I mean, maybe they all are. I don't think so, though. I think you are head and shoulders above the rest of them. You help us in many ways that I think most people don't know about on a day-to-day basis, and very much appreciate it.
It's my job and I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Okay.
Keep loving your job.
Thank you, Thomas Ryan.
You're welcome.
Maybe we can move the State House to like Marlboro or something. Closer to the center of the state, right? All right, now we're going to have a presentation. I think half the room is here from Sustainable Stow and HeatSmart. You pick. I would like. I didn't mean to make you freeze, Sharon. You can come on up. I would like the people from HeatSmart to introduce themselves to the board, and just some faces I know, some I don't.
Okay, I'm Sharon Brownfield. With Arnie, we are the co-chairs of Sustainable Stow, and I was the coach for HeatSmart.
I'm Arnie, and I'm co-chair with Sharon of Sustainable Stow.
Lee Cooprider, a member of Sustainable Stow.
Rick Plant, member of Sustainable Stow.
Martin Meyer, member of Sustainable Stow.
George Friedman, member of Sustainable Stow.
Carolyn, member of Sustainable Stow, and handle the marketing for HeatSmart for Stow.
Thank you. Sharon, do you want to join us, or Arnie, or you?
Since the slide presentation is over there, it might be easier for us to be here.
Terrific. I'm wondering if, George, do you want to navigate the lights? I don't know what might help. It looks pretty good right now, but maybe it could be better.
Okay?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Oh, that's even better.
All right. Go ahead, Arnie.
All right. Well, Sharon said Sharon was the coach for the HeatSmart program. This, I'm pretty sure, is the third time we've come before you about this particular program. It's a program to educate and encourage homeowners and communities to adopt clean heating and cooling technologies. It was initiated by Mass CEC, the Mass Clean Energy Center, and as you may recall, I think it was about 2.5 years ago that we first came before you when Mass CEC was running their pilot program. We did apply to become one of the first of the 4 communities to be a HeatSmart community. Unfortunately, we were not selected as one of the pilot communities. What we did in the subsequent year was decide to partner with the town of Hudson. It made sense that Hudson would be our partner because we're both served by the same utility, Hudson Electric Power. I'll speak to that in a moment. That was accepted, and the 2019-2020 we did do our HeatSmart program, as Sharon will describe. Just one more slide, just to reintroduce you to HeatSmart and why we did it. So heating in statewide represents 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, in Stow, it's a larger figure, both because we use fuel oil predominantly as our heating fuel, which has more emissions per BTU than natural gas, and because our electric sector is particularly clean. So if you looked at that pie chart for Stow, it'd be a larger slice of the pie for heating. Heat pump technology has improved dramatically in the last 10 years. It's now efficient in cold climates, can work down to In some cases, minus 15 degrees below zero. It's lower cost than it had been. And we felt, and MSCEC agreed with us, that Hudson and Stow were particularly good choices for electric heat pumps for two reasons. One is we have among the lowest electric rates in the state, and what that translates to is when you convert your home from heating with fuel oil in particular, your cost per unit of heat is about half that of fuel oil. And if you were to convert your home from natural gas to an electric heat pump, it's about a third less. And another advantage we have as customers of Hudson Light Power is we're among the cleanest sources of electricity in the state. It's over 80% greenhouse gas emission free. And with that, turn it over to Sharon.
Okay. Oops. I don't know how to do this. So basically, I'm going to give you a sense of what we did. Here's the HeatSmart team, and we had two HeatSmart coaches. We had Bill, and I really want to thank Bill because he really opened up the whole department and gave us all the information we needed because we needed to get demographic information for market segmentation. Arnie was our technical coach. We had social media coordination from Hudson. As Carol mentioned, she was the marketing coordinator, and that was essential because that's really was our task to market this to both communities. And Tom Green was the one from that. As you can see, we had a number of volunteers who just did great work in terms of doing that. And I really wanted to note Craig Martin because he was our financial contact to get all the monies and stuff like that. So, and with your support and Kate Hogan's support, it really helped us get off the ground. So let me give you a quick snapshot of our timeline. We submitted the application in September 2018. We were not notified until January of 2019. So you can imagine we were all on pins and needles through that time. January they had volunteer training, and we got about 4,500 from the state that went into the coffers here, and we could use it for the various marketing activities. We also got technical consultant support through Cadmus, and they were fabulous. They really helped in a variety of ways, both from a technical point of view as well as from the marketing, establishing our website. They were just instrumental. We selected our installers in March, and they were two. We had Boucher Energy Systems that were for the air source heat pump, and Winslow Heating and Air Conditioning, which was for ground source. We also introduced heat pump hot water units later on in the program. March through the November was the official program. We had 6 community forums, we did block walking, and we had numerous mailings. November 2019 was the deadline for signing up for a site visit, and then we officially ended the program in January. So let me give you a sense of some of the activities that happened. We had 12 open houses in both Stow and Hudson. This gave an opportunity for people to actually see the system working and talking to a homeowner about, how's it working? How are you doing it? Do you use ducts? Do you not use ducts? Because it is much more complex than a solar array. We had multiple outreach events. We had local tabling events like Springfest. We were there. We also did hazardous waste and Hudson. We did numerous presentations to local clubs, COA, Lions clubs, and associations. Lots of marketing ads. Articles in the paper, Stow Independent, letters to the editor, Action Unlimited, digital media, Next Door, Wicked Local. We found digital media very effective websites. We try to Google Ad and Social Advocate. They weren't quite as cost effective as some of the others. We did visibility with yard signs, t-shirts, as you can see, and we even had a banner, and thanks to the building department, it seemed to help stay up quite a while. It wasn't just 2 weeks. We had newsletter that we sent out through MailChimp. We had a list of customer base from our Solarize program, and we created a MailChimp that we sent out periodically to those, and then we expanded it to those who indicated an interest. And then it went out monthly, and then it went out bi-weekly as we were closing to the end of the program. Also wanted to mention that Hudson Light and Power put an ad for heat pumps in their newsletter, which was a great boost. It just really got more people interested in it. Here's just some of the material we had. You see what our yard sign looks like. We had some basic 101, both ground source and HeatSmart. That was the newsletter from Hudson Light and Power on the right, what their insert was, and that was our mailer, because we did a targeted mailing, just to see that the professionalism, again through Cadmus and the funds that we had. We also had a focus on low and moderate income, and that's one of the reasons why Hudson was such a good choice, because of the diversity of people they had there. We worked with Beverly Craig, who's a senior manager for LMI at CEC, who helped us with the eligibility and the process for applying, and when someone was eligible, she would do that process for us. We focused on educational opportunities about the process and initiatives and resources available. We created specific handouts for LMI. With the market segmentation, we actually targeted different areas where we had door hangers that we put on doors that when people weren't there, they could know about it. And we found that face-to-face was great in talking to people. Our incentives were this. Hudson Light and Power stepped up. Their normal incentive is $500. They doubled it for our program to $1,000. Big point was MVP. This is a specific program that we found out about, that contractors get certified through MVP, and then they, if they're certified, then when they go work with their customer, they can check what the energy savings are that they're going for what they put in, insulation or heat pumps, and then can get a rebate. The rebate goes to the contractor, and then they share it with the customer. This was critical, and Boucher actually stepped up to the plate and became MVP certified in order to participate in our program.
What does MVP stand for?
Municipal, market value performance.
Okay.
Okay. It was in a pilot phase, so we got in just in time for the pilot. One of the other things about the MVP program, because it is not mass saved, it does allow for 0% financing. So we would not qualify for 0% financing because we are serviced by a municipal light company. So because they were MVP certified contractors, then everybody got an opportunity to do 0% financing. And I think over 90% of the people who did heat pumps did the 0% financing.
Wow.
Critical. We specifically took some of our marketing money and created grants for specifically LMI qualified people, so that we give them a grant of $500, additional to any other rebate they got. So let me tell you what the results were.
Sharon, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
What's the average cost of a system? Maybe you already said it, but...
What's an average system?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's a real hard. So for example, our system in our house, we have two systems. One's ducted, one's ductless, a mini split there, but that's a whole different thing. Arnie, what did you get?
So I got a ducted whole house heat pump. The range is enormous. You can go anywhere from a single mini split for a room that's been either hard to cool or hard to heat to your whole house. So it can range anywhere from about $4,500 for a single mini split installation to $45,000, or if you're going with a geothermal system,
Oh, those are much more
those
expensive.
can be more.
Sure.
50,000.
Thank you.
So our initial goal, because in our application we had to say what our goals were, that between the two towns we would do 55 air source heat pumps, 12 ground source heat pumps, and 10 low and moderate income people. We had 272 leads, 201 site visits, 76 contracts, and ended up with 65 air source heat pumps. So we beat our goal, and we came real close to the ground source heat pumps with 11. We only had 6 LMI grants awarded, but that was pretty good considering. One of our learnings was that low and moderate income are difficult to reach. And basically, even with 0% financing and the incentives, it's just too expensive to do up front. So the state, and certainly all of us as we're going in terms of trying to get people being more energy efficient, have got to think of something else to work to meet the needs of people who are low and moderate income.
So you got almost a 30% result on your leads, which I think is pretty good in marketing. I mean, maybe 28%. That's very good. I mean, I think 10 is considered.
Even.
Yeah.
Because then in sales, you're lucky if you get 1% of total leads.
Yeah, similar in fundraising. Wow, that's great.
A lot of work.
Yeah. Let's see. Rick?
Just to go back to a question you raised, Jim, I mean, the other thing is that, and it was stated already, but I don't think you can state it enough, so much of this program is education. So I don't know how many people we also educated who didn't necessarily go through our program or didn't go through it now. But, you know, it sounds like a lot of money, but when somebody, says, oh, my furnace is dying, or I really need whole house air conditioning or a better air conditioning system or whatever, and you start thinking, oh, I get heat and air conditioning in one system. Think about a new furnace costs, think about what a significant, I mean, not just a window unit, a significant air conditioning system would cost. And all of a sudden, this doesn't look so bad. I mean, you factor in the fact that you can also remove your oil bill, or not remove it, but a lot of it.
Well, I get your point, and I don't know that I thought it was that expensive. Anything involving ducts in your house is more expensive. But of the 76 contracts you sold, maybe this is an easier question to ask, what was the typical cost range? Were they basically people buying mini splits without the duct system and not geothermal, or did you actually sell some of the really expensive duct systems?
It would be hard for us to tell because we weren't privy to that type of detail.
All right.
We could see who came in
And that makes sense. You're more like sales and marketing than anything
Right.
else. Okay.
Okay. So one thing is the delay may have hurt us because we were all geared up to start, and when we finally selected our installers, we did not have the first meet the installer meeting till like May. So that comes summertime, and that's the contractor's very busy time. Although they did fabulous work, people were only interested in air conditioning, so there may have been a problem with that. Again, Hudson Light and Power newsletter insert, great. Social media and one-on-one marketing was really essential. Our block walking, when we went to homes, we had some really significant conversations, and we're surprised when people said, oh, I hadn't heard about this, when we had done as much as we had done. And again, as Rick said, unlike solar, heat pumps are an education. I mean, people can look at the roof and see solar, and it can generally be explained. it's pretty simple. But when you talk about heat pumps, you know, air exchange, doing that, so how does it work? How does it get the air in the winter? And what is a ductless? You know, it's a much more complicated explanation. So education is critical. Great partnership with both our team, with our town, Cadmus, and our installers. It just really worked. And 0% financing was critical. And Kate did her job, and we have a commemorative certificate, which was given to us.
Highly valued. Well, it certainly sounds like you deserved it. That's terrific. Questions from the board? Mr. Over here, anything?
Mr. Ryan.
Nothing. Mr. Burke.
Yeah, this is a great presentation, good victory lap. Congratulations for all your success and thank you for all your hard work. But the question that just is hanging out there is, if you miss this program, what can you do still? Let's say your furnace is dying right this minute.
Well, you can make sure that you get an MVP contractor. And we have, you can go on their website and see what the contractors are. Talked about heat pump, you will still get $500 from Pennsylvania Power, and you could get some other incentives from that, from the MVP program.
So there's still some benefits that can be realized from the HeatSmart program that you guys have been piloting for the last year or so.
Absolutely.
That's a good list.
I think Carol has something to add.
Yeah, Arnie can probably speak to this better, but there is something called the HeatSmart Alliance that started up amongst some of the pilot towns that have gone through HeatSmart, and they've gotten approval from Mass DEC, and you know, Arnie can talk more of that. But so that will be an option for people whose towns have finished the pilot and want to continue.
So you lead us right into the next slide, which is what are we going to do going forward?
I apologize for jumping the gun then.
No, you don't. You led us into it. That's great.
Yeah, so we thought we'd finish up the presentation with, you know, how do we move forward from where we are with the program we did with HeatSmart, we did the solar program, as you recall, 5 or 6 years ago. We did, as Sharon mentioned, we exceeded our goals for the most part for this particular initiative. But if you look at the number of heat pumps that are installed and divide that by the number of homeowners in Hudson and Stow, we're still only at about 1% of homeowners who have converted from, for the most part, from fuel oil and natural gas to electric heat pumps. So, and that's certainly to be expected. I mean, as for the issues that Sharon mentioned and Rick, and for most people, they just are not in a position to replace their furnace or boiler at this time. So, you know, why would they spend the money to replace it during this particular program? So this is going to be an ongoing effort over the next 10 or more years. And it will be necessary, and I have an additional slide that I'll show you in a moment, to meet what is going to be statewide greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. And in Stow, as I'm sure you're aware, that transportation is our primary source of greenhouse gas emissions, and heating is a close second. So what are the actions? One of the things the town has already been doing is what we would call leading by example. So 2.5 years ago, we converted the police station from natural gas to heat pumps. As a result of that, the police station is now using 45% less energy annually. We have just completed the retrofit of the town building to heat pumps, so I don't have data yet on what the energy reduction will be, but in talking to Craig, he told me that throughout the winter, the portion of the winter when the heat pumps were running, the backup condensing natural gas boilers never even turned on. So I'm expecting we're going to get a very significant energy and cost savings from that retrofit. As Carol mentioned, the towns that have participated in HeatSmart and towns that would like to have formed a coalition, if you will. These are surrounding towns, which we're calling ourselves the HeatSmart Alliance. And the idea there is just to continue over the coming years the type of program that we started here in Stow and other nearby communities have also been working on. And transportation, as I mentioned, that's our largest source of emissions. A number of initiatives. One thing to put on your calendar is that we have a town transportation forum that Kate will be presenting at on April 21st. And there's a set of very important state legislation and regulations that will be almost certainly passed this session. And I'm just going to give you an overview of that and then indicate what that might indicate for the town in the next few years. So this legislation falls into two categories. One is called mitigation, which is intended to mean how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions to mitigate the impact of climate change. And as you may be aware, the governor has already come out in favor of net zero. In fact, he has created a draft executive order to that effect. And there is a bill that has already passed in the Senate and a bill that is likely to pass in the House that also mandates net zero by the year 2050. I don't know if you're all familiar with that term, but what it does mean is that statewide our greenhouse gas emissions would be zero or netted out to be zero, so whatever residual emissions are left from transportation, heating, industry, agriculture would be netted out by carbon sequestration from our forests. The other big category is what's called adaptation, and there's two bills that one of which will almost certainly become law, one from the governor, one from the House, that will provide significant amount of funding for communities like Stow to adapt to the changes that will be coming in over the next decades from the impacts of climate change. So what does that mean for Stow? So over the next few years, we're likely to be seeing new regulations, new incentives, new grants for adaptation, which is also sometimes called resiliency. What we're looking at is probably over $1 billion from the statewide to communities. And so that would translate to something like $100+ million a year to help implement the Stow Community Resiliency Report. So we need to think about how to get ready once that legislation is in place, so what our priorities are and how do we apply and use those grant funds. For the mitigation aspect, what we can expect to see is more efficient building codes, higher vehicle efficiency standards, building heating and hot water regulations and incentives, such as we've already been talking about, and additional protections for forests and wetlands to enable us to sequester as much carbon as we can. So, just a preview of what I think we're going to see in the town over the next 2 to 3 years.
Terrific, thank you. Additional questions from the board? Mr. Ive.
Well, comment really is, thank you guys very much for doing that. And I haven't taken advantage of it yet. But what are you going to, you're going to keep going on to some point, right? But will you still have information up on the town website that people can access if they want? It looks like you've developed a lot of good promotional materials and things like that, and information that people could use to start out. Is that stuff still going to all be available? And things like that?
Good question. So this, what I call the HeatSmart Alliance, and that is our official name, has our own website now. And what we certainly can do, and that's a great suggestion, is link people to the HeatSmart Alliance website from the town.
Yeah, because I know I wasn't ready to deal with some of that stuff last year. I found it rather daunting, but I had all good intentions. And maybe at some point I'll get around to it, which would be, you know, having the information you guys have already done. I'll say contractors that you've vetted, that you know are eligible for the state programs. That may very well help push a lot of people, you know, over the edge to continue with some of it.
Yeah, so I think what we can do is that the website already links it to Sustainable Stow, and you can also, if you want to link directly to the HeatSmart Alliance, but we'll make sure that Sustainable Stow has some information about heat pumps, and then also directs to the Alliance, so that you can get it in two different actions, two different ways.
Barney didn't mention, the Alliance is also doing public education forums. There's another one coming up in a couple of weeks, right?
Right, you know, it was 1 week ago.
And that's passed. But, so, that would give you a place to go and meet installers and learn more about the technology.
Additional questions from members of the board? I got one in the audience. Administration?
Thank you.
No? Okay. Mr. Brewer?
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hathaway?
So I was thinking, as a town clerk, I see a lot of new census forms and new homeowners and sales and stuff. So there's people that probably don't know about the program. So I was wondering if you make sure that you continue working with Hudson Light and Power, getting that information out there, or even, you know, because there's a whole new group of people coming in that might be very interested in, or who found the first part of the program daunting and, like Tom was saying, might come in at the second time. And I'm even thinking that the solar program, you know, getting people, you know, knowing about that, or if there's another round coming up, you know, I mean,
We're still getting our S-ranks.
yeah, no, but I'm just thinking that there are people out there that might not have been able to participate now, the second time around it could go, so more education gets out there, that's all.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Obviously, a lot of the questions are about latent demand, so you got to think about that. Good thing you're keeping it going in the form of the HeatSmart Alliance. Arnie mentioned one statistic that particularly interested me, that 30% of greenhouse gases, I forget exactly what you said, but you said that Stow was higher.
Stow.
And that's, okay, and that suggests to me that you've got data on what types of fuel consumption in both public and private in Stow?
We do for all private residences. That's standard, I don't know if it's standard, but it's census data. And it was some of the data that we had to submit with our application.
I did not know that. So even though oil deliveries are so decentralized, there's a central data repository?
There is. So we are, I think the number is 55 to 60% fuel oil, which makes us what's considered to be a high-cost heating town.
Right, that's what I assumed the reason was. Okay,
That
great.
data, I think, is also captured in the housing data that we submitted for the marketing segmentation. And that's how they cut the market segmentation, both for our block walk and also for our direct mailing.
Thank you. You've made me fall behind in my agenda, but for all the good reasons we were interested. Oh, Ms. Frazier.
I just want to thank you very much for your ongoing efforts.
Yeah,
Thank
you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Started out as a very small working group, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Come a long way.
No, they have. A lot of real results from
Your
real
support.
people.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So let's go to the town administrator's report, which includes an update on a couple of specific things.
So I do apologize for my belated submittal of my activities report. Just can't seem to get somebody.
I was hoping you were okay.
I have to look at it on my phone.
You don't have to take it too far. it's been busy, but in any event, so if you haven't been able, I sent it out this afternoon, but I'll give you it, and then you can catch up on a written one if you don't have it. Of the activities report, 2 items are mentioned here, and I'll just speak to them. So one is the van service to South Acton Station, which was basically broadly alluded to by Kate. Kate applied for it and received some local pilot grant money for 3 communities of hers. We were one of them. And the original intent, expectation of that seed money for a pilot program was to basically have Stow partner up with the ongoing Crosstown Connect service that's been around now probably for 6-7 years, and in fact, in part, they provide transportation to the train station. We had some initial conversations with representatives from Crosstown Connect, and I think there was a general feeling that it may be too expensive. What they can offer us at best was a partially occupied second van that they have. They've got a large interest and usership for riders, so they'd have to come over to Stow, which is a little out of the way they were going, and the best they could offer is that whatever remaining seats haven't been occupied, you could jump in. The price that was being estimated, I think, in the end, we thought for a lot of reasons we might be able to do better with it, more cost-effective and efficient, and so we began the discussions of utilizing an ongoing van service we have already, which is through the COA. And that is paid for through the cherry sheet. For any of you that remember when this legislation first came up many years ago, when the MBTA was extracting large sums of money from the suburbs through the cherry sheet. And there was an argument made by our legislators that we were being charged too much for too little service, if I paraphrase. And what was forcefully pleaded by our legislators along the Belt 495 Beltway is that, you know, we're already contributing, and what was worked out on paper was that if for every community in our area that could show that they belong to an RTA, then we could offset the cherry sheet charge by essentially, and this is what we're doing with the Massachusetts area return, we're basically a sub to MART on paper. And each year in my budget, I provide monies for drivers and the operational costs, including fuel, for our COA vans to take care of our COA population. And we've had discussions, and I think we're close to being able to close. And Thursday, Jim, I, Kate, and I think Jesse will come with us. And we're going to go to the COA board. I've spoke with the chairperson in advance. The director of COA, I believe, is on board with a proposal that we're essentially in the off time when they're not using their vans, which were purchased by the friends of the COA, and they have already agreed to allow those vans to be used for that purpose, and now we're just trying to persuade the COA board, and we're making an offer that we think they'll accept, that I don't know that was made clear to them before what will be the meeting on Thursday, where we're going to go in and say, look, for 1 or 2 round-trip runs a day to and from the station, both of which will occur outside the normal operating hours of their van, which is their vans run from 8:30 to 2:30. So the early trips from South Acton Station are 6 o'clock. I mean, you know them better than I do, but we can get 1 or 2 runs there and get the vans back in plenty of time for them to use at 8:30, and then in the evening 1 or 2 of the returns past at 2:30, and so the van's available, the larger one of 20, which they've offered. They do have the smaller one as well, and MART has offered a backup in the event, and they offer that now to the town through the COA. If a van breaks down, MART will provide one of their own. So the vans will be available to us. We are going to take on the operational costs. administering the operation, dispatch, scheduling, and the rest of it. The van drivers, all of whom are part-time, or most of them are part-time, are interested in picking up more hours, so we're going to basically work with them separately. The planning department has agreed to take on the administrative responsibilities of that. Their part-time administrative assistant is pretty familiar with what the COA does. She's confident she can take care of those matters. We've got 24/7 dispatch anyway, so if there's an emergency, instead of calling, as it is the case with the COA, the director who has to then call somebody, we're going to link them right up to our 24/7 dispatches. If the van breaks down, get somebody to take it back, get it. We cost the repairs are costed out. We do them already, and we'll pay for the van driver's use. We do expect to charge a fee. I'm guessing around maybe $2. And we won't be able to, in collecting those fees the first year, until we have a town meeting vote where we establish a bylaw for a revolving fund, those funds will go to the general fund. So during the pilot, we're not accounting for those funds, because we're not going to be able to know it in May, first of all, at this annual town meeting, what we've got going. So for the first year, it's going to be the Kate's funds alone, and I've got it in my budget 10 to 15 grand to supplement. We've got an estimated budget cost running 2 a day, outlay of about 30,000 in total. She's got 25, I put 10 or 15, and we're 35 or 40. And then we'll see what the fees, rider fees, pick up operationally each year, and if it's doing well, there'll be an indication over time, longer term, that this becomes a service to town. Now, Kate, as was stated here, she has the first of what she thinks is 3 successive years of financial assistance or subsidy to that program, if the pilot program this year, and we're going to begin it as soon as possible. If we get approval on Thursday, we're ready to roll soon.
Great.
Part of what I'm doing internally with regard to local receipts is I'm trying to go cashless. For a lot of reasons. Currently, our vendor who provides our payroll happens to provide the software program that Maynard is using for taking fees with plastic. So we're almost going to be operational from day one. He's coming out here in a few weeks to go through, not only for that purpose, but again, every one of our access points for local receipts, I want to go to a handheld with a swipe. There will be, if necessary, or check, but get out of cash. And so I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm confident we can get this program through the first year, and I think the interest is going to be sustainable. Longer term, parking is going to be something we're going to have to deal with. I think for the first year in the pilot, we're talking about at the fire station, and north side, south side, east side, there's parking that totals enough that I think it will get us through the first year during those hours. We do have excess parking just down the street at the Crescent State, the abandoned old highway barn if we need to. And then longer term, we'll have to figure out some permanent parking, and I think there's some thoughts already about what we can do there. But in any event,
I could just add 2 things.
Yeah.
Part of the effort to get this going is Kate wants to ask for additional money for next year, as she said. To bolster that argument, she needs to have some results from the money she got us last year, so we need to get this rolling by like May. We certainly think that 2 vans a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, should be doable under this arrangement. That would let us hopefully cover the 2 rush hour trains where parking is simply not possible, the 708 and the 753. If there's more demand than that, and I expect that there very well may be, we may have to reapproach Mark, we may have to reapproach another RTA for something bigger, but that's further down the road. We just right now need to get this thing up and running, see if anybody shows up. Maybe nobody will show up, in which case there's no issue, but I think that people are going to show up. We'd like to approach for parking. I have on my list of things to do approaching the Catholic Church. Churches are good places for this kind of stuff, because generally they have a lot of parking that they don't use during the week. And, you know, who knows, we want to explore every option we have.
Right. You know, overpromise, underdeliver. I've been saying it repeatedly, do a few things, do them well, get this started. You have to say no to some things because we're not in a position to know accurately what the outcomes will be. And if we do that, then A, we're not breaking promises. We know that at its simplest form, it's sustainable, so we can go forward with that. And I think that's what we're going to do this year. The second thing is PFAS. Jim I and Kath Safira had a conference call with Mary Jude Pigsley, who's the director of the DEP regional office, and she's been with us for months now, as Kate has and others, our Board of Health, State DPH, you know. It's a burdening problem, and the purpose of the call was for Mary Jude to apprise us of the current status of their work in town with monitoring wells, particularly. As you know, we've been on the radar since our municipal well and both school wells, Center School and Hale, exceeded what were the pending, and now they're being promulgated at 20 parts per billion. And they've dropped over 30 wells in this immediate area because of the hot spots. She was informing us that they just got the results, testing results, the analyticals back from the fire department and the fire station, the abandoned fire station. Fire stations are presumed, because of their past use of fire foams and other that had PFAS in them, they dropped some wells, and I think I gave you the results of 2 of the 3 wells that are back. The one on the north side of the fire station property came in at just under 600 parts per trillion. 20 is the upper limit. It's probably as high a number as we've seen. The south side was 74, which is around where the town building number is on that. So she wanted to let us know that, and let us know that in the upcoming weeks they've got planned for in excess of 30 more monitoring wells, private and public, in this immediate area to try to, as you know, the circle radius gets enlarged, and they keep going out 500 feet until they find, hopefully, the limit of where there's analytical testing results that show that we've got contamination. And so she was giving us an update. This serves as an update, and at this moment we keep on keeping on with regard to trying to identify and define those sources, private or public, that have PFAS contamination above the new limits.
Just to add, I mean, our current chief and our 2 past chiefs are both adamant that they never use the firefighting foam for training at the station. And Bruce Fletcher in particular tells a very persuasive case. They had one candidate that's really expensive, and he just wasn't going to use it. Who knows? There could be other sources. You know, Mary Jude claims that the simple act of coming back from a fire and cleaning the equipment can sometimes be the source of PFAS. And also, let's not forget that before there was a fire station there in the 60s, there was a high school there that burned down. And fires tend to be PFAS sources. So, but nothing is set in stone, nothing is established, but they were just apprising us of the numbers. Mr. Burke.
I have something to add on both aspects of the town administrator's report, but I hope to be brief. But taking the last first, if we can just eliminate the PFAS from the water supply by this charcoal filter that I thought the town administrator mentioned at some point.
Granular activated carbon filtration.
Okay, thank you. But why don't we just do that and stop testing?
It's in the groundwater.
I mean, you,
Right.
So to answer that, I don't know DEP says so, but I'm guessing what DEP is saying, like, so many of the ground contaminations, they want the ground cleaned up from it so it doesn't continue to feed into to the water. Now you could argue, well, who cares, we're going to filter it anyway. That's above my pay grade, okay? But that's the reason why you wouldn't. It's the same thing when underground storage tank leaks. You know, you clean up the contaminated soil.
No, you're right. From a common sense perspective, you're right. But it's Chapter 21E, which is that strict liability
You want to clean up the dirty soil.
Right.
I understand Ms. Frazier has a point, and she's probably more informed than either one of those.
You had a second point.
I just wanted to say that we may not know how this migrates in soils or how long it takes to dissipate. So cleaning it up, although expensive, might prevent further liability down the years. I know someone locally in the neighborhood, who has a private well that's contaminated. So there are, as long as we don't know the extent of the contamination, we don't know how many citizens are also, facing what, the filtration. I recently had a conversation with a water specialist about my own domestic water. And, I understood that a carbon filter is a good remedy. It's not, I got the impression it isn't 100%.
That is not what I've heard.
In any event, I think in one case it's treating symptoms and not the cause.
Yeah.
What the state wants to do is treat the cause, clean up the dirty soil, get it out of there so there's no, and PFAS is considered doesn't have a half-life. I mean, as far as the science is, it goes on contaminating forever. And so I think what they're saying is, as they did with other hazardous waste, we want to clean up the soil, which is the source, instead of just treating the symptom. And in the event you're wrong about the fact that granular activated carbon completely cleans it up or not, if you don't remove the source, you're always leaving yourself open for future problems that you didn't know about because the science improved. And so what they're saying is, let's clean up the soil.
Well, and I've been involved in litigation involving underground storage tanks that the chair uses as an example, and it's extremely expensive, but you're talking about something that seems to be permeated everywhere. And again, we're way ahead of ourselves. I'm just saying right now that we can test from now until crack of doom, but I don't know if we'll ever have enough money to remediate everything.
You may not, but it's like the Superfund sites that went on for 60 years. The government's in the business of protecting the environment first and foremost, at least my experience in 36 years is, and the cost doesn't become as a prescription for them as much as the environment. And in any event, we don't control that, the law will, and we can probably fight in court if it comes down to us saying it, but I don't know how we decide that tonight.
So I want to suggest that an uninformed conversation on cleanup is not what we want to do right now. The point of this item was to inform us, we've been informed, and the public, and everyone's been informed. I think we can leave it at that. No conclusions have been drawn. We're certainly not the only municipality that is facing this issue, including at a fire department. So maybe let's just leave it at that. Mr. Burke, I think you had another point on the transportation point.
Yes, I did, and I agree with you, Mr. Chair, about not going any further in the PFAS. It's just that I thought I'd mention that I'm kind of, my eyes are starting to bug out.
It provokes an emotional response. It's perfectly
Well, I
understandable.
don't say emotional response. I'm just kind of gobsmacked.
You have another point, right?
Yes, all right, sorry. But I don't want to be accused of being emotional. About PFAS.
No, just for both.
Points for Ms. Frank.
So what is the next? Let's go.
Nothing. Just, I think, I hope the chair checked to see the parents who use the fire station, the abandoned fire station, to drop off their kids at around 6:30 to 7. I also think it's a great idea to see if you can use the church or even the abandoned High Rock Church. I think that's going to be more propitious going forward. But I know you want to start it. I know it's a worthwhile idea, but you got to start getting the word out.
Well, yeah. First, we got to figure out how to do it. Good point about. No, I didn't check the traffic at, let's say, just before 7 o'clock there. So
I drive by that.
That may be worth doing.
Do you want me
Parking,
to?
sure.
Have you Bell the Cat?
Bell that cat, yeah. That'd be great.
Should we buy High Rock Church to make it into a parking lot that pays?
For
I want to buy a parking lot in
for the
Boston.
right price. That's another topic. I think you're done. Thank you. Anybody else on the town administrator's report? We got a bit to go.
Appreciate your patience. I hope not.
We do. All right, thank you. Is there anything else in your town?
The rest of it's an executive session.
Got it. All right, I want to, our last thank you, Mr. Ryan, for letting me borrow that. Our last substantive thing before we go into executive session. So I went to the first real meeting of the Town Administrator Search Committee. I'm glad to see Karen's here. And a couple of things. So when we were talking about pulling this committee together, we assumed that once they got together, they wouldn't want to know what the selectmen wanted as a town administrator, that they would do their own thing. Far from it, they want to know. So there was some discussion with the public and among the committee members about general characteristics of a town administrator leading toward them selecting criteria. They asked me a few questions, you know, have the selectmen decided what kind of a town administrator they want? And there was this general discussion among everybody. Obviously, everyone agreed you want experience with financial management, some managerial experience. There was a lot of discussion about experience with human resources, which is a topic coming up. Some discussion about how you want someone familiar with IT. But then they asked me specifically, do you have goals for the next town administrator? Well, no, not really. What are the goals? And you'll love this. What are the goals for the Board of Selectmen? Well, and I gave him my whole speech about how I've never found those useful. Ross Perry in particular had an interesting suggestion, which was, do you want one of the qualities of your next town administrator to be someone who would coach you or guide you through that discussion? That's very interesting. So I agreed that at this meeting I would raise this topic with the board, and we would try to cobble together some qualities of a town administrator. I would take it back to the screening committee. I can make some suggestions just to get the discussion going. Karen is here, so maybe I don't have to take it back, but you know, I would suggest, just to get the discussion going, that we do want those big three: financial management experience, HR experience, someone who can coach or lead us through the discussion about strategic goals, policy planning, not control that discussion because those are our decisions, but prompt us to have it, guide us through it. That's all very good. Those may even be must-haves. Some wants. We've always loved the fact that Bill has or had construction experience. It has helped us numerous times. And I am more and more starting to think that we need someone with experience with DEP and maybe hazardous waste issues. Not as a must, but as a plus. Let me open it up. I hope that was clear. Karen, did I summarize what our task is here correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me open it up. To anybody. Oh, wow. Okay. We'll start over there. Ms. Frazier.
So, personal qualities that I would love to see in our next town administrator would be those of high personal integrity, and I don't know how objective a human can be, but objectivity or fairness wherever possible, at least a sense of that, and sort of drawing from your mention of Ross's idea about getting coached on a direction. I kind of feel as though that's something that Bill does for us on a regular basis. He guides us, he coaches us, and he does it in a, I don't know if it's diplomatic, but just in a thoughtful way that isn't, I don't feel as though he's trying to convince me one way or the other. He's informing me. I think that's very valuable. And I think someone who is articulate, but perhaps not verbose, would be excellent.
Well, I should say that there was some discussion at the meeting about how one of Bill's skills that we've always valued was his ability to communicate at town meeting. especially on financial matters. There comes a point where he gives people a confidence that everything's been considered and the due diligence has been done. Is that part of what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay. May I go on to Mr. Ryan? Are you done?
I'm done.
Thank you. Tom?
I tend to agree, I agree with everything Courtney said, and I also think that one of the things Bill does is he does look forward out a few years to see what's going on. He just doesn't beat us over the head with it. That's all. He brings it up at the appropriate times at, basically, what Courtney was saying. But because he does that, I hadn't thought about that really. I just assumed that every town administrator would do that. So I don't think there needs to be a lot of formal planning, but I think our town administrator does need to look towards the future to see what the challenges are going to be down the road, which Bill does on a regular basis for us. A couple of the other things that I came up with, I think they need to be willing to learn new things. Bill has always dug into anything that needed to be dug into. He wasn't scared of it. And if he felt we needed to bring in somebody, that was okay too. But usually by then, he already knew what he was talking about, so that he could carry on a good conversation with anybody he brought in by knowing at least enough to be dangerous. One thing I thought of too is willing to coach town employees to bring up their skills. It's not just all about them, it's pushing other people to increase their skills. We're going to have a lot of turnover in the next few years, and so anybody who we bring in, I would hope, is going to be bringing the skill level of some of the other town department heads up also. Needs to work well with others, fair-minded, and willing to look out for the best interests of Stow, which is essentially what Courtney said, high integrity. So those are the ones that I came up with.
Thank you. Both of you obviously came here prepared. I'm hearing one thing in common from the two of you, a little bit of skepticism of formal planning and a sense that what goes on here right now is enough. Is that fair?
Well, I think we all try to take a bit of a long view, but we've also, we can't be all things all the time. I've been involved in a lot of planning sessions over the years, and everybody comes up with all these great ideas, and then 2 weeks later everybody forgets about them. and it's been not necessarily time well spent. I think we tend to deal with and we look far enough forward, and I think Bill looks forward more than we do, that I think we've got a fair balance, at least at this point.
Do you want anything?
I would
I'm
agree
hearing-
and say it slightly differently, that I think planning, I think looking forward is useful. Planning is often foiled because other things happen.
Let me ask you a more pointed question. What do you think we need in this regard that we're not currently doing, if anything, in this planning regard, if anything?
I don't think we
Okay.
need more.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
Oh. Karen, I'll be quick, I'll be brusque. This is way too premature to ask for us. You've got probably, how many applicants you got? 30, 40? 30? You're going to be winning about, I would say, a third of those. And it's only at the next level that you start really getting into what special qualities would we be looking for. And that's why we picked you guys, because we thought that you could figure that out. As far as whether or not, and Mr. Salvi, our chair, will be there. on a regular basis, I'm sure, guiding you, prodding you, poking you. So that's, I've got no qualms. I don't think you need any input from me, at least. And also keep in mind that when it comes time to pick the new town administrator, there's going to be at least one, maybe two new select people on this board. So what is our input now going to mean? Bottom line, if what I heard is scrape a piece of skin off Mr. Wrigley's hand, clone his DNA, and then you're all set. But as to the want-to-haves, the great gets, that's 2 or 3 months down the line. And as far as trying to prod the select board into going forward and trying to make long-term goals, yeah, I brought this idea up a couple of years ago. It went nowhere. We can have coffees on Saturday morning, I suppose, and try to work it out, but it's just, you know, that's just the way our board seems to operate. But I think trying to figure out whether you need to prod the board into developing long-term plans, that should be very low on your list of want-to-haves.
Well, before you pass, which is fine, let me make this point. I think their desire to hear from us at this point is fine, even if you're right that they don't get to this kind of, I mean, they're trying to develop their criteria, and they're trying to reflect what we want, not completely, but they want to know. But even if you think they want to hear it 2 or 3 months from now, there's no reason not to discuss it now. You're wrong about one thing. I don't plan on going to many of their meetings at all. I went to the first one just to make sure they showed up. Because I had the same attitude toward it that you did. I think we're supposed to stay out of it, except when asked. So if you want to pass, that's fine. I just don't want you to lose the opportunity. And as for the planning and goals, I agree with Tom. The planning sessions I've been involved in, mission statements, goals, waste of time. I found Ross's, I'm a little more positive on it than you guys are. I found Ross's suggestion, getting input from the, formally going through it, you know, having that person maybe even draft some goals that we can talk about from the person who's going to implement it. I don't know, kind of interesting. I'd want somebody capable of that. But do you want to pass or do you want to modify?
No, I'm just saying, I think that's a discussion for way down the road. It was nice that you put up with our chair on that first meeting, but, and you'll always have Mr. Wrigley's input too. I have confidence in you guys. We couldn't have picked a better screening committee.
I just want to make sure, I think you're misunderstanding. This is something that they wanted to hear from us.
And I'm saying they don't need to hear it. They
All
think
right.
they want to hear from it, but they don't.
Okay. Bill, do you have, no reason for you to be silent on this.
The performance I've heard so far is pretty good. Actually, I was a planner at one time. As a practical matter, the reality intercedes too frequently that in my 36 years, and I try to look forward all the time about all things. And I've found with all the other more immediate demands of this position and your position, that occurs so frequently that it's difficult. Just look at the matters we're discussing now that have consumed all of our energies for months,
Sure.
right?
Right.
It is true that I've suggested subtly some structural impediments, especially on the budget side, longer term, and they're in my annual report every year, so I don't give up on them, and we've talked about them, and there were times when your board has set goals, and there was a sustained period of time, I don't recall, it was probably in the early 2000s, where every year there was multiple meetings of establishing the goals. I would only say, if you go back and look at what transpired as a reality, and that's not a criticism, because the fact of the matter is I would have agreed that more important things came up that took immediate and concentrated focus over a sustained period of time, that no one would have found you guilty or had the courage to say, by the way, you didn't accomplish your goals this year. Goals sometimes come to you as opposed to the other way around. Having said that, I wouldn't dismiss out of hand if the Board of Selectmen wanted to engage me before I leave or the future town administrator for longer term thoughts, but I would reduce the level of importance that might play or should play in picking the next town administrator, or even trying to grade the Board of Selectmen on that.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Fisher.
I'm not averse to a person capable of, you know, as you said, I'm not averse to having somebody have the capability to look forward and to have the conversation. I think sort of what I got partly also from what Bill just said is that for me the conversations are more useful than actually making plans or setting goals. So talking about what's important and looking at what appears to be coming that could be important are the useful parts, and trying to force an agenda into the calendar is often more difficult.
Mr. Ryan.
You know, I found it interesting, you know, for the concept of it, and what it did is it made me realize and think that, yeah, Bill is a very thoughtful guy. I think it is a requirement that our town administrator be a planner for the future. He just doesn't need to beat us over the head with it. It's one of these things that he Bill's always looking out towards the future. And I'll leave it at that, but other than, I think I disagree with Brian. I think it's valuable for the committee to ask us what our thoughts are at this point in time. We give them to them, and they take them for what it's worth. And
thank you for asking.
Thanks for asking. So,
Mr. Burke.
I'm just going to say I agree with some of the points Mrs. Fraser made, and I respect my colleague Mr. Ryan's disagreement. I'm just saying we can set goals ourselves tomorrow if we really thought it was that important. We don't want to burden you with another job criteria or criterion that they should help us through. I don't think. I think you're going to do a great job. And the less interference you get from us, I think, the better. But that's just me.
I'll take the last word. I have come to think. I'm remembering because I was staff to a state board, and I'm remembering what we did to help that board write its. Well, we called it a work plan. We didn't go 5 years out. We went only 1 year out. And staff did the initial draft, got shot down on probably a third of it, 2/3, if I was, but it engendered this conversation that they had to have every January. And I wouldn't mind having something like that here. But more to the point, I was reading the charter the other week, and I had forgotten how strong it is about how we have no operational role, just policy. But on policy, that requires someone, it does require the person who implements the policy to occasionally make some suggestions and some guide. Hey folks, we need a policy on this. Hey guys, I'll do a draft of that. You guys can tear it up. That would be useful. And I would like, individually, I would like someone, not so much on the goals, because I kind of go with Brian saying 5 years strikes me as ridiculous. 1 year though, maybe not. But on policy, considering that's our main function, I do want some help. I mean, Bill is helpful, but I want somebody to kind of initiate that. It's hard to explain. I want a little more coaching was Ross's word. It's not a bad word. That's just me. All right, we all set on that?
That was the last word.
Are you all set, or do you want me to?
I've taken notes.
Okay, great. I may or may not show up at your next meeting. I don't even know when it is.
We won't be able to keep away.
So, no, I don't want to go.
Thursday 12th, the rate,
I don't want to go. I don't know what planet you're living in.
Right.
Okay,
We're
let's.
going into executive session, are we?
Well, liaison reports, since we want to skip that.
Everywhere.
I certainly don't have anything pressing. You have anything?
Scott continues to work on the Red Acre Road project, which is a huge thing for them to think about.
Tom, Town Hall Forum tomorrow.
Town Hall Forum tomorrow, and, you know, it kind of piggybacks on Bill's, but, you know, the emergency management groups are all coordinating over the coronavirus stuff. I've spoken to the fire chief, police chief, and they're all getting together and so on, so I won't belabor that point, but that was pretty much it. Oh, and Chief Marino says that in the next few weeks, we'll probably end up convening our public safety group. He's got a couple of candidates that he thinks he's going to bring forward to the group that Bill chairs for selecting police officers. So that'll be coming up in the next month or so.
Most of my stuff has been discussed tonight, except complete streets. Planning Department, Valerie Orpheus in particular, has done some great work looking at accident data on certain of the secondary roads in town, so Boxborough Road, South Acton Road, West Acton Road, Sudbury Road. And she's done a spreadsheet using the police department's codes for the reasons. And you can, it does start to show a pattern, you know, there's a lot of accidents that smell, you know. So it gives you the ability to determine, are these accidents due to conditions of the road, speed, what are they? A lot of people are looking at their cell phones, they're running off the road, and obviously a lot of people slide down on snow. I wanted them to come and present it because I found it interesting, but they want to wait and do some more data and compare it to places like Great Road and Gleasondale. They think it might be a little bit different. I just want to let you know that they're putting some effort into that, and it actually looks extremely interesting. And over a 4-year period, something like 20 accidents that require police response. You know, I can't speak about stuff that doesn't require police response. And Mr. Burke.
FinCon continues to do its meetings in preparation for the budget, and I'm glad we had such a light agenda tonight.
Okay. I'm not sure what that means. I think that was sarcasm. A little red flag should go up when we're being sarcastic, so we all know.
At this time of the night, everything I say is probably
Red flag with an S.
And with that, I will take a motion to go into executive session. And
So moved.
For the purposes of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, and to review executive session minutes. Motion's been made and seconded. As far as roll call vote, Ms. Frasia.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're in executive session.
Red light's gonna go off.